You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. Bitcoin, Ether, Ripple, Litecoin, and more. Cryptocurrencies and other digital assets are taking the financial world by storm. This exploding market provides everything a savvy trader needs: volatility, volume, and liquidity. Provided you know how to find it. That's where we come in. Welcome to the Crypto Rundown. Each week, we'll break down the latest trading activity, trends, and developments on everything from coins to tokens, futures, and even OTC options. If it's moving the crypto markets, then you'll find it on the Crypto Rundown. This program is brought to you by Genesis Volatility, also known as GVol, home of institutional-grade crypto options analytics. Whether you're trading CeFi options or DeFi options, cryptocurrencies move. Use GVol Analytics to analyze implied volatility, model realized volatility, structure positions, and unlock alpha. For more information, visit gvol.io. That's GVOL.io. Now it's time to dive into the exploding world of cryptocurrencies and digital assets. It's time for the Crypto Rundown.
All right, everybody. That music, or perhaps lack thereof if you're listening live, means it is time once again for the Crypto Rundown. If I sound a little bit different, listeners, it's because I'm coming at you hot and heavy from our southern studio. I actually broke out the travel gear. Going a little bit outside of the friendly confines of Chicago for the first time in, I don't know, a year and a half. For those of you who have been listening to the network for a little bit, since the last time I went down to, I think it was the CBOE Risk Management Conference was the last time I broke out the old travel gear. That was in February of 2020. So it's been a while. But now we're back in the friendly confines of the southern studio, and all is warm and sunny here as we kick off the Crypto Rundown. And it's just going to be me today. We're going to dive right on into it. Just the facts, man, because a lot to break down as we head right on into the Bitcoin breakdown.
It's time to explore the latest trending activity, trends, and developments across the world's leading crypto market. It's time for the Bitcoin Breakdown.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Bitcoin Breakdown, the portion of the show where we do exactly that. We break down the action in the world's leading digital asset. Of course, we're talking about good old Bitcoin, and man, there's a wee bit of price action going on out there since the last time we chatted. At the end of our last show, it was a little bit shy of 31,000. It was about 30,800. Well, it has lifted a wee bit since then. Coming into the kickoff of today's show, it was at 39,325. It was up nearly 5,000 handles just today. And on the week, just on the 24-hour high, it got up to about 39,554. So you're talking up, about 8,500 handles from our last show. So impressive stuff. In fact, we actually, throughout the course of the week, actually broke the 30K level to the dark side, got down to as low as 29,504. So we've actually had a 10,000 point range on the week. It got as low as about 29,500, and coming into the high of today, it was 39,500. So that's a pretty impressive swing for all the folks out there who are holding out hope that Bitcoin will become a de facto reserve currency. These types of swings are the kind of thing that make people say, I don't know. Imagine the dollar moving this much over the course of 24 hours. That would be pretty damaging for our economy. But that said, it's the first kind of bullish ray of sunshine we've had for the crypto bulls out there in quite some time. a lot of things seem to be leading into this. Of course, we have the usual Musk effect. Will he, won't he? Apparently, he's in the will he phase again. So that's, of course, leading to some upside here. Jack Dorsey also talking it up over there at Twitter, even though he kind of always has done that. Amazon maybe making some rumbles in the Bitcoin and crypto space. That also giving a lot of lift over the last 24 hours. And maybe we talked about it last week with Eric from Vellum, the notion of what's going on with China. Maybe some folks having digested that news a little bit more and seeing maybe the crackdown wasn't everything people were worried about or anticipating. Either way, a lot of bloom back on that Bitcoin rose this week. And that's interesting. On our last show, again, all these analytics coming at you courtesy of our friends over there in Genesis Volatility. gvol.io is the place to go to kick the tires and light the fires, listeners. And if you did that, you'd see that the vol from our last show to this show, surprisingly, hasn't changed that much. It was at about an 81.5 on our last show, and coming into today's show is about exactly an 80%. It spiked up a little bit intra-show, up to about an 85% or so, but not perhaps as much as you might think, given everything that's been going on out there. And, of course, we had our friend Simon Ho on our Pro Q&A session last week, available on demand now for all of our Pro members out there. He, of course, is the creator of BitVol, amongst other things out there. And BitVol, which is effectively the VIX for Bitcoin, it hasn't moved that much either. It was at about an 83.5, 83 double, actually, on our last show. And coming into today's show, 84.5, so up about a point. So we'll see if this big movement, if this translates into more sustained volatility going forward, or if this is kind of just a blip and we're going to see the vol kind of hover around these levels or perhaps even drift lower. We shall see. Lately, it seems like it's been the latter. Vol spikes and then it drifts back down again. So we'll see if that pattern continues or if something new is going on out there. This is a new regime, not just for price action, but also for volatility. SKEW-wise, on our last show, it was decidedly negative almost 5, about 4.65. Coming into today's show, it has swung in the other direction. It's up about 0.6 to the positive out there. So pretty much a 5-point swing since our last show. Breaking down the calls versus puts, they had come off quite a bit on our last show. Now, of course, this move driving a little bit more OI. We also have the good fortune to be doing this right towards the tail end of July. So July hasn't come off the board yet. By our next show, these OI numbers will be very different because July, of course, will have gone the way of the dodo. But right now, the calls out there in Bitcoin, about 87,500 over there on Deribit. Again, all these analytics I'm quoting at you are coming from the big source, which is Deribit. Unfortunately, hard for a lot of you folks to trade out there in the U.S., but still the number one place to go for analyzing what's going on in the Bitcoin options market. 87,500. That's the OI right now on the call side. It's up about 12,000 contracts from last week. And given the fact we've had a 10,000 point range in that week, that's not surprising that the calls would be adding some OI. Puts also ticking up as well. 56,000 open on the put side. That's up about 5,000 from last week. So a decent pop out there across the board from an OI perspective. Looking at where you folks are lining up, I said July might catch up to the quarterlies, and it was looking pretty good on our last show, and it's now at a number 2 spot. Seems like Deese has just usurped it ever so briefly, and of course, it'll be gone by the end of the week, July. So that was its high water mark. It briefly got to the number 1 spot, I do believe, out there. But people want near-term exposure when things are whipping around like this, so not surprising to see July make it out there. But Deese right now, number 1, 37,800 contracts open in December, up about 4,500 from our last show. July, a close number 2, 37,600. It's up about 3,600 contracts from last week. And then SET bringing up the rear. That's about 32,000 contracts open. They're up about 4,000. So it's going to be all quarterlies again when we come into our next show. But July making a good showing of it, especially given the fact that pretty much all that OI came online in the last few weeks. It wasn't like Deese in September where they've been building OI all year long. This is all new paper. So interesting to see that July can come roaring out of the gate like that and bodes well for what we have coming up out here. In terms of the notional value of said OI out there, how much value is actually open right now in the options on Deribit, that has ticked up as well, as you might imagine, up to about 5 billion from 4 billion on our last show. And if you add in all the other venues, CME and everything else, talking about 5.5 billion out there. And in terms of volume, today was kind of the first day where we're seeing some actual paper going up on Deribit. Every pretty much show for the last couple of months, it's been not a heck of a lot of notional value transacting today. Last show was 368 million. Before that was 446 million. All of those a far cry from back in the April-May timeframe when we were talking regularly 2 billion worth of notional volume a day changing hands. Today, first day that might threaten that again. 850 million had transacted by the time we kicked off the show out there. So it's probably north of $1 billion by now. So that's the first day we're crossing the 1B level, or I expect it to at least. So that's a good sign that maybe some paper finally coming back. In terms of where you folks are lining up, what strikes are you actually positioning on right now? Where's the size paper? The size positions in Bitcoin options right now? Well, it's the 40,000 strike. Surprise, surprise. 9,400 open there. It's up about nearly 1,000 from last week. And again, as we threaten that strike again, not surprising that that strike coming into focus again. Nice to see some relevant strikes topping the list for a change as opposed to 80,000 or 100,000, or shall we say some of the more outlandish strikes that have kind of been obfuscating what's really going on out there in Bitcoin for a while. Number 2, the 20,000 strike, the strike that wasn't that far in the rearview mirror just a few days ago. 9,000 open there. It's up about 1,000 from last week. Number 3 is the 50,000 strike, getting optimistic again. 8,300 contracts open there. It's up about nearly 2,000 from last week. Number 4, now we're getting back to the wild lands. 100,000 strike. That's at 7,800 contracts open there. It's up about 400 or 500 or so from last week. And a newcomer to the top 5 this week, it's a 60K strike. That's got about 7,000 contracts open there. So interesting to see a few more relevant strikes making their way into the top 5 these days. Not a lot going up on CME. We're going to scroll right through that because we don't have a lot of time on the show today as we head right on into the altcoin universe.
It's time to move beyond Bitcoin and find out what's moving the rest of the crypto marketplace. It's time to boldly venture into the altcoin universe.
All right, everybody, welcome to the altcoin universe, a portion of the show where we explore everything going on outside of the big dog, which is Bitcoin. But before we do that, we do have a little bit left for Bitcoin because we're talking about the top 10. And you can't talk the top 10 without talking about the big dog. But let's start number 10. Then we've got a good old Solana at number 10 here with about, $8.25 billion worth of market cap. Standard caveat applies. Keep these market caps. Take them with a bit of a grain of salt. Number 9, we got Litecoin at about $9.25 billion. Number 8, Bitcoin Cash, about $9.5 billion. Number 7, good old Polkadot, $14.5 billion. Number 6, it's Doge, $28.8 billion. Number 5, XRP, $30.6 billion. Number 4, Cardano, about $43 billion. Numero Trace, Binance Coin, getting back up there again, $53.7 billion. Number 2, it's ETH, $270 billion. And the big dog, still the big dog, $736 billion. Obviously, a far cry from that 1T level again, but also a wee bit higher than it was, let's say, on our last show. And, of course, let's get into the number 2 name that a lot of you, actually for a lot of you, it's your number 1 name. A lot of you are very interested in ETH and everything going on out there. ETH having a good week as well. 538 handles to the upside on our last show. It was floating around 1,800, about 18.25, and coming into today's show, 2366. So a nice run. It was threatening, that 17 half level for quite a while out there, and now popping back up again. In terms of vol, ETH has been structurally more volatile than Bitcoin for a while now, and that continues to be the case right now. And like Bitcoin, it hasn't really moved a lot from our last show. It was 99% on our last show and a brief pop north of the triple digits level after these movements, and now back to about a 99% again. So vol-wise, it isn't as big of a story as you might think this week out there in the crypto world. In terms of SKEW, last show, it was a negative 1.2. So negative, but not quite as pronounced as we saw out there in Bitcoin. And now coming into today's show, more negative, actually. Almost negative 3, about 2.86 out there. So interesting stuff afoot out there in Bitcoin. Let's see what's going on out there from an overall notional value of the OI out there, listeners. It's been kind of a similar story in ETH that it has been in Bitcoin for quite some time. But yeah, in general, it's kind of been a quiet time. And then this week, the most active day was the 20th with about 179 million since our last show, really. And on the 6th, before that was about 147 million. So not a ton lighting it up. Let's see if more has gone up since the start. Yeah, about 159 million up there right now. So not a heck of a lot. Just a pretty steady week. Most days around 150 million with the notional, but nothing really blowing the doors off. Remember, we got up to 1 billion back in May, so not quite at that level again. OI-wise, though, a little bit more action going on out there. Folks adding some more ETH paper, which should be expected if we're moving that much out there. The calls up to 742,000 contracts open. It's up about nearly 60,000 contracts from this time last week. The puts, 434,000 contracts, up about 16,000 from last week. And in terms of the notional value of that OI, it's up, as you might expect as well. It was about 2 billion worth of OI open on our last show this week, 3 billion. So a wee bit more OI from a value perspective floating around out there. In terms of where that OI is lining up from an expiration perspective, last week it was pretty much all quarterlies, and this week it's quarterlies with July kind of sandwiched in there in the middle there, in the meat of the sandwich. Number one is still Dece, 335,000 contracts open there, up about nearly 20,000 from last week. Number two is July. July is roaring onto the scene, 295,000 contracts open in July. It's up 42,000 from this time last week. I'm not sure if we're going to have enough time before expiration for July to topple Dece from the number one spot, but we shall see. And number three is September, hovering right around 250,000 contracts out there. That's up about 10,000 from last week. And in terms of where the action is from an ETH options perspective, where the size positions are right now, it's the 5,000 strike with about 65, almost 66,000 contracts open. It's up about nearly 2,000 contracts from last week, followed by the 1,600 strike, 46,800. That one's actually down quite a bit. It's down about 16,000 contracts. So as we bounced away from that strike, apparently some folks taking their 1,600 positions off. That means the 1,600 strike is now pretty much tied back with the former big dog, which was the 480 strike, which is still open for 46,000. Followed by number four, the 3,000 strike, 41,500 open. That's up nearly 5,000 from last week. And the bottom of the top five here is the 2,400 strike, which is pretty much where we're hanging out right now. 35,800 contracts open there. So interesting stuff afoot. Let's break down some of the other big products you guys like to watch before we answer some of your questions and get the heck out of Dodge. Let's go to, here we go. Ripple having a good week. XRP up about a dime from our last show. Bitcoin Cash, you mentioned all these lurking in the top 10 now. Bitcoin Cash up 88, almost 89 handles from our last show, and Bitcoin SV up about 14.7 from our last show. And of course, your friend, the doggy coin, up nearly 5 cents, 4.6 cents since our last show. And before we roll out of here, let's keep on rolling into your crypto questions.
You've got questions about crypto. Who doesn't? It's time to find out the answers to your crypto questions.
All right, everybody, time to answer your crypto questions today. We got a fun one here from Christian. Christian wants to know, would you describe crypto options traders as being different from regular options traders? Seems like an interesting new segment of the market, potentially. Thanks for shining some light on this stuff. OIRN rocks. Well, you rock, Christian, but thank you for that dose of love for the network. And, that's an interesting question. You can answer that in a couple of different ways. We're kind of fortunate here on the network in that we have some insight and some analytics that show us how you folks stack up and how maybe the crypto folks, you're right, are a little bit different. The folks who kind of gravitate towards the crypto underlying are certainly different for the most part from our traditional audience. That said, there certainly is overlap. There are folks out there who listen to our Option Block and other shows who trade their Teslas and their SPYs and their VIXs, who also, just by the fact that there's a lot of volume and volatility out there now, have added crypto into their rotation. It's something you could watch that you can actually trade. It has volume, it has liquidity, it has volatility. That's all an options trader really needs. Your thoughts about the underlying are almost immaterial at that point. It's really just about how things are shaping up from an options perspective. Can you trade it profitably? And the answer to that is yes. So people will go out there and trade it. So from that perspective, there is a lot of overlap, but we also have seen quite a few newcomers to the world of options come in through a show like this. Folks who come from the tech world who are just strong believers in crypto and the ethos behind it, the lack of tracking, the not using fiat, whatever it is that brought them to the crypto world. And as a result of this show, or maybe just hearing about it in other venues, they now have discovered options as a result. So we have seen a strong overlap of people coming into this show who are relative beginners, probably have never really heard of options, and also aren't really that versed in investing. They're not really traditional investors. They're not out there buying and holding your Teslas and your Apples. They're really mostly seeing things through the crypto lens. So this is kind of a new thing for a lot of them. So for them, it's been a nice transition for them to come in, discover a show like this, and then graduate to things like Options Bootcamp, Options Playbook Radio. Those are great beginner introductory paths for a lot of these people. So for what we've seen, Christian, the answer is yes. I mean, there obviously is overlap for a lot of our audience, but we have seen a lot of new people who are predominantly and almost solely myopically focused on crypto. They don't really watch anything else. They don't really trade anything else. And they now want to start trading the options on them. So, thankfully, the strategies, the education, the nuances are all similar. You have to talk about different things like liquidity is not exactly the same in some of these products, and the SKEW is going to be a little bit different and things like that. If you come in and learn what a covered call is, you can go then apply that on, let's say, a Ledger X or wherever else you're going to trade these crypto options on. So at the end of the day, the lessons, information, the things you learn from a broad options perspective can be applied to the crypto marketplace. But you're right. There is a bit of a different audience that is A, tuning into a show like this, and then now B, graduating into the crypto options space. I'd be curious to talk to the folks at Ledger X and others and see kind of how their analytics stack up as well. It sounds like from the few times we've had them on the show and from talking to them, outside of the show, it sounds like they see something similar there as well, where it's folks who are coming to them who aren't the traditional trading audience, who are coming to them because they want to probably get some yield and maybe sell some of their existing Bitcoin holdings because that's a physically settled contract and they can get some yield and write covered calls against them. So there is a bit of a different audience, and they look at things a little bit differently. But at the end of the day, you can still apply the same lessons to both marketplaces, and that's where we find things that are interesting. And for us, we find it fascinating to have whatever your thoughts are on crypto, whether you love it or you hate it. This is the marketplace that's here. It exists. It's fairly liquid. It's fairly volatile. So from an options trading perspective, it's interesting. And so we keep an eye on it from that perspective. And that's been fun for us. And we love the fact that so many new people are discovering the network as a result of coming through a show like this. And we welcome all of you. Christian, whether you're one of them or whether you're just a longtime listener, we appreciate all of you folks out there. And that's going to do it for this kind of truncated episode of the Crypto Rundown. Remember, we're here for the Southern Studio throughout the week, so you're going to get a lot of on-demand stuff coming at you later this week. Tomorrow, the advisors option. All of our pro folks will get early access to Options Bootcamp and Options Playbook Radio. The rest of you will get Options Bootcamp and Options Playbook Radio on your scheduled day on demand on Wednesday. So don't worry, I was coming at you. I'll be back here live on Thursday for TWIFO and for episode 2 of the Option Block, live again on Friday. No rest for the wicked. Volatility views and options oddities. Then, of course, we're back again next week, back from Chicago, unfortunately, for another episode of the Crypto Rundown. See you guys then.
This program is brought to you by Genesis Volatility, also known as GVOL, home of institutional-grade crypto options analytics. Whether you're trading CeFi options or DeFi options, cryptocurrencies move. Use GVOL Analytics to analyze implied volatility, model realized volatility, structure positions, and unlock alpha. For more information, visit gvol.io. That's GVOL.io. You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/The Options Insider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.